Good morning, this is Peter Booker, and today I'll be giving the forecast for the week of Thanksgiving. We actually have a lot to talk about this week, from very warm temperatures to start off the week and showers and thunderstorms across the southeast. But this will give way to colder temperatures just in time for Thanksgiving, especially over portions of the Great Plains where moderate to even heavy snowfall could occur over Minnesota and the UP of Michigan. So let's get started. Now looking at the jet stream, we can see this ridging pattern over the east, and with it some very strong winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This will be followed by this strong trough that arrives just in time for Thanksgiving, and we can see it digging here towards the south during the days Thursday and Friday, and becoming entrenched actually in time for the weekend. So we'll be seeing below average temperatures in many areas that are experiencing above average temperatures early in the week. Now looking at the forecast map for Monday, we can see the shower and thunderstorm activity over Texas and Oklahoma to begin the day Monday. Rain showers and snow showers as far north and west as Oregon and Washington. Now as we move forward in time, we can see these precipitation areas begin to move further to the east. Especially as we get later in the day Monday, what's not being shown clearly is stronger thunderstorms developing in southeastern Texas, this extending into places like Louisiana. A severe thunderstorm watch could be issued in that area late in the day Monday. I would not be surprised. We can see that rainfall activity over the northwest changing to snowfall as it moves into Montana. And as we get through the day Tuesday, we can still see the development of showers and thunderstorms in the Tennessee Valley, a low pressure system beginning to form over the Dakotas, delivering moderate snowfall over North Dakota, perhaps 1 to 3 inches in that area, some isolated 4-inch amounts. And as we move into Wednesday, we can see the rainfall begin to fall apart over the Appalachians. So locations in the mid-Atlantic, such as Virginia, will likely see very little in the way of rainfall. As we move into the northern plains with that developing low-pressure system over Minnesota, we can see moderate to heavy snowfall on the backside of that system, some places receiving over 6 inches of snowfall from that storm. And that's especially the case as we move forward, let's say, into Wednesday afternoon, where we can see some lake enhancement on the backside of the system. Lighter rains will be ahead of the system, let's say from Detroit southward into places like Knoxville, Tennessee. Again, much of that rainfall will begin to fall apart as it hits the Appalachians as we get later in the day Wednesday. The big winners will probably be to the north and south. And what I mean by that, over the extreme south from Texas to portions of the panhandle of Florida. But as you move into the southern Appalachians, the central Appalachians, much of that will begin to fall apart. Now further to the north over the Great Lakes, this is another heavier precipitation area where moderate to heavy snowfall could occur again from North Dakota to Minnesota, Wisconsin, and into the UP of Michigan. Now as we move forward in time, broadly speaking, we can see heavier snowfall begin to develop over the favored regions of western Pennsylvania, western New York, on the backside of the system as winds kick out of the west. The same thing is true for much of the lower peninsula of Michigan and the UP of Michigan during the day Thursday, which you'll also notice if along the shoreline of Washington State and Oregon, we can see rainfall coming inland here. And this will be in time for our next system that comes in during the later portion of this week. And that will be associated with, let's say, another shot of cold air coming down the eastern side of the Rockies. Now taking a closer look at the south central plains here, we can see over Texas during the day Monday, this line of showers and thunderstorms moving from west to east during the day. Now ahead of that, we will have some supercells that do form Monday afternoon and even into, let's say, the early morning hours of Tuesday in Louisiana. And some of those storms could have, let's say, small hail, but even produce a short-lived tornado. And we could see that maybe on the order of maybe a 20% chance during that time period. Now, as far as rainfall amounts over Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas, some locations could pick up easily 1 to 2 inches of rainfall from this line of storms. Now, as that continues further to the east during the day Tuesday, we'll have showers and thunderstorms overspread Mississippi and Alabama up into, let's say, northern portions of Georgia, where a bow echo seems to form in this model here. Now, a bow echo typically means straight line winds if it does occur. Now, that would be on, let's say, Tuesday morning again, before everybody goes to work, but when many of us are asleep. Again, straight line winds anywhere from 50 to 70 miles per hour could occur in northern Georgia during Tuesday morning. What you'll also notice is that rain activity begins to fall apart as it hits the Appalachians here. Much of the Piedmont of northern North Carolina into central portions of Virginia, not much rain occurring, little to next to none really occurring here during the day Tuesday. So many of us will miss out on the rain here, unfortunately, in the south, especially as the system begins to move off to the east. Now, looking at the northern plains here during the day Tuesday, we can see that low pressure system really get going. And what we'll see with that happening is light to moderate snowfall, especially early in the day Tuesday over the Dakotas into Minnesota, but begin to become heavy over portions of northern Minnesota and to northern portions of Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, as again late in the day Tuesday and early Wednesday morning. And probably the location that's going to receive the most again from this is the UP of Michigan as we get into Wednesday morning, when we get that wraparound moisture around the system with the enhancement off the lake with the northwest wind. So that will continue through the day, probably Wednesday, just from the lake effect alone. So some areas here could pick up 6 to 12 inches in the UP of Michigan. Lighter amounts further to the west. Minnesota, much of the state will be picking up anywhere from 1 to 3 inches of snow. Some localities as much as 5 inches of snow can be expected. But again, where that sets up is not quite certain, but probably north of Minneapolis, I would expect. Now, looking at precipitation amounts over the next week, we can see the heaviest amounts occurring in the northwest, especially through midweek. We can see 1 to 2 inches of rainfall here from northwestern Oregon into much of the west coast of Washington state. A big winner here is in terms of snowfall is the Cascades. Over a foot of snowfall can be expected there. Now, lighter amounts off to the east as we get into northern Idaho, western Montana, 1/2 inch to 1 inch of precipitation expected there. Lighter amounts still as we get into portions of the Dakotas, but this precipitation amounts, notice they pick up in Minnesota, eastward into the UP of Michigan. That's indication of that low pressure system really getting going as we get into the day Tuesday and Wednesday. Further south still, we can see the heaviest amounts of rainfall this week, probably over central portions of Texas Monday morning, into southeastern Texas, let's say Monday evening into Monday night, and still over, let's say, southern portions of Arkansas and even eastern portions of Louisiana from heavier thunderstorms that occur early Tuesday morning. Now, unfortunately, for much of the southeast, we'll see lighter amounts, let's say, along the panhandle of Florida, extending north and eastward into Carolinas, and especially as you get into central Virginia, next to really nothing in terms of rainfall on the day Tuesday for much of the east coast here. That system really falling apart as we get into the day Wednesday, especially Wednesday morning. We'll see the system likely fall apart. Now, this only shows through the end of this week, maybe towards Saturday. It doesn't really show the development of the next system, so we'll be getting into that soon enough here. Okay, so I do want to go over snowfall amounts here. Looking at the day Monday, we can see lighter amounts of snowfall over Washington state and Oregon. And again, this is mainly over the Cascade Mountains here. As we extend eastward into Idaho and Montana, some locations could pick up over 6 inches of snowfall in the higher regions, let's say near the Tobacco Root Mountains, extending northward into Glacier National Park. That is possible. Another location here that you're seeing in Colorado around Pikes Peak, right, could pick up 6 to 12 inches there. But most of the areas in the valley, cities, much lighter amounts, 1 to 2 inches can be expected in general. Now, as we move forward in time, We can see heavier amounts of snowfall over northern Montana extending into North Dakota. This is snowfall developing Tuesday morning from that low pressure system. And that begins to really pick up over Minnesota as we get into the day Tuesday. And especially as we get into the day Wednesday, we can see some heavier amounts of snowfall begin to form over the UP of Michigan. Again, greater than 6 inches of snowfall expected there. This extends into the province of Ontario in Canada during the day Wednesday into Thursday. Now, as far as snowfall amounts in western New York, western Pennsylvania, again, this will be due to lake effect snowfall machine really getting going during the day Thursday. Anywhere from 1 to 2 inches in general east of the lakes. But some of these areas that do pick up the heavy bands could pick up well over 6 inches of snowfall. Again, these regions are very localized, I guess is the best way to put it. So some areas will pick up the heavy snow, other areas will not. And it's hard to really predict exactly where that will happen. But somewhere downwind of the lakes will pick up 6 inches or more in these heavier bands. Now, what's interesting off to the west, if we look, let's say, towards Nebraska, extending back to Montana, we have another area of snowfall developing. And that will be accompanying our next system over the Great Plains and extending into the Midwest. Now, what's deceiving is what's occurring over Missouri and Illinois. This particular model is showing a 24-hour snowfall of 9 to 10 inches in that area. The specifics of snow, sleet, or freezing rain in that region is really not set in stone yet. And I would expect some mixed bag of precipitation over that location as we get into this weekend in particular. What will be forming the precipitation probably over this area is a warm nose of air, overriding cold air in Missouri and Illinois as we get into Saturday and Sunday. So we'll likely start as snow, change to sleet and freezing rain in that particular system if it does set up this way. Now, I do want to talk about temperatures and the temperature changes that we will be seeing this week. Be kind of like a seesaw pattern where we experience warm temperatures at the beginning of the week and it changes to colder temperatures as we get towards the end of the week. Now, to start the day on Monday, again, much of the southeast is going to be above normal. 60s and 70s throughout the southeast, even 50s through much of the southern plains, extending into the Midwest and portions of Pennsylvania. The Northeast will be, let's say, the only really cold region here with highs in the 40s from New York to Maine, but that will eventually give way to some warmer weather as we get into the day Tuesday. So let's see what Tuesday looks like in comparison. Again, we can see some cooler temperatures extending from Maine back towards Virginia here with a backdoor cold front. Some almost like cold air damming occurring there, but again, it's very weak cold air damming. Temperatures still getting into the 50s in central Virginia during the day Tuesday. But you'll notice this colder air really starting to come into the northern Great Plains here with that system that's delivering snowfall over Montana and North Dakota during the day Tuesday. Now, as we track forward in time, we can see that cold air really begin to push down as we get into the day Wednesday. Again, afternoon highs during the day Wednesday are in the 20s across the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Temperatures are still in the 70s, though, as you get towards the mid-Atlantic down towards Florida, ahead of that cold front that will be pushing in just in time for Thanksgiving. And as we get into Thanksgiving, we can see those cool temperatures during the morning on Thursday being in the 20s through much of the Ohio Valley and into the Northeast. And that cold air really establishes itself as we get into Black Friday. So those going out, let's say early in the morning Friday, will experience temperatures in the 20s as far south as, let's say, Asheville, North Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, all the way up through the Northeast. So those going out doing some shopping, they're going to experience some really cool temperatures. That will be staying probably for the rest of the weekend. So for those that continue to shop, let's say during Saturday and Sunday, they'll be experiencing daytime highs in the 30s and the 40s from the mid-Atlantic through the Northeast for the next couple of days. So I do want to show the departure from average here as far as temperatures go. And we can see here the really warm temperatures from the southeast to the northeast during the day Wednesday. That's replaced by colder temperatures for the remainder of the week. And we're talking about Thursday through Sunday for, let's say, the state of North Carolina all the way up to the state of Maine. Temperatures 15 to 20 degrees below normal. So quite the change here in time for Thanksgiving. What is also interesting is the warmer temperatures that build up behind that, right, over Texas during late week, let's say during the day Saturday into Sunday. And that's going to actually collide with this cooler air coming out of the northern plains. And that will form another storm system likely over Colorado late in the week. Now, as far as that collision of air masses, we can see this storm that briefly forms over the central plains here, anywhere from, let's say, eastern Montana down into Colorado. We could be experiencing light to moderate snowfall. But that kicks east very quickly here, right? We can see some rainfall and thunderstorm activity. Again, some strong showers and thunderstorms over Texas, Louisiana could form again. But the snowfall that we usually see from a system like this is not going to be there. We're not going to see this heavy amount of snowfall necessarily over the Great Plains. In fact, a strip of light to moderate snowfall could extend from Nebraska to Michigan, anywhere from 2 to 4 inches, but it'll be a very quick hitter in comparison to the system that you're seeing early in the week. So I do want to discuss why the storm system begins to fall apart over the southern plains. And the main reason for this, if we were to look at the middle troposphere here, especially at the 500 millibar level, we can see where this short wave begins to peel off from the source region. Now, when I say source region, look at these lighter blues over Canada. That's where the cold air is, or that's really where it comes from to begin with. And what you want to see is these colors extend down uniformly into the south if you want that cold air to come further and further, let's say southward into places like Oklahoma and Texas, and really have some staying power. Unfortunately, for those that like cold and like snow, this shortwave is going to actually shear apart from the source region as we get into the day Monday and Tuesday. And when that happens, the cold air is going to begin to retreat northward very quickly back into Canada. And this is the primary reason, that this is happening. So maybe the best way to discuss what's happening here is to look at the temperature departure on Monday versus Tuesday. We can see the cold air outbreak on the day Monday through much of the eastern portion of the Rockies. But this fades away quickly during the day Tuesday. We can see those blues and purples really fade into these lighter reds, lighter oranges during the day Tuesday. Again, once that shortwave gets cut off from the main source region in Canada, those cold temperatures are no longer reinforced from that region. And we can see some real rebound in temperatures over Texas during the day Tuesday. In fact, we're going to see really warm temperatures set up in the southeast because, again, that region of cold air is being cut off to the north. And we're going to see the subtropical jet stream really kick into this region, again, bringing in not only moisture but also very warm weather over the southeast potentially as we get into the first week of December. So we'll leave it at that for today's forecast. Again, keep an ear out for any severe thunderstorm warnings over the southeast for those that live there. Again, can't rule out an isolated tornado early this week. Again, portions of Texas into Louisiana, maybe as far north as northern Georgia during Tuesday morning. Rainfall amounts, again, could be heavy, 1 to 2 inches across the southeast early in the week. Moderate to heavy snowfall right over Minnesota, extending into the upper peninsula of Michigan as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. And then another shot of cold air in time for Thanksgiving. So again, we got a lot to think about here coming up. And I think this weather system, as we get into next weekend, we'll have a better idea as we move forward in time. What's interesting is that shot of cold air early next week, followed by a very quick warm-up. Again, this is over a week out and could change in the coming days, but that would be interesting to take another look at as we get into the forecast next week. But until then, have a great week. and I'll see you then.